Well, hello and welcome to this new version of YAG. That's version 0.12.6, and it's a feature version mainly focused on the UI. As all non-content updates, lots of new things are not visible on screen, but behind the curtains, believe me, this one was a huge lot of work and difficulties. The most important of the invisible news is that the size of YAG has been reduced by 60 gigabytes, which is absolutely huge. So YAG went from 80 to 20 gigabytes, all content included. The size of the game was basically divided by 4, so do not be surprised if you notice it, that's normal and nothing is missing. Also, in the Invisible News department, the Voxel plugin has been updated to its latest version, which forced me to rewrite large parts of my code. So again, huge unnecessary work, but completely invisible to the end user. The most visible thing, beside the obvious new look of the UI, is the new HUD here on the top right, which displays in real time useful information about your state as a player and the state of the game. The general idea is that if you try to do something and get an unexpected result or no result, a glance at the HUD should give you a hint about why the game isn't responding the way you want. The next important new UI feature is that at every start you will be presented with a new home window. It can be manually displayed here in the new information menu, clicking the home button. And you can, of course, disable the option to show it at start by unchecking this box. It has been designed to help newcomers finding their way through YAG, so it will give you the necessary step to start with YAG, like choosing your local options, installing the content, and learning the basic with the new introduction PDF tutorial that you can get clicking this button. This PDF should allow someone who never played YAG to understand the basics of how it works and to quickly create a simple scene and manage its content. Next, this window gives us a few useful links, the YouTube stuff, tutorials, changelog, things like that. It also allows us to display the cheat sheet in its PDF format in the PDF viewer. Okay, as a reminder, the cheat sheet contains all the shortcuts for the keyboard shortcuts and the gamepad control, so very useful here. And finally, it gives us way to contact me if you have any questions or suggestions through the Discord server and the Steam forum. All right, next we have two important changes in the YAG controls. The first one is that we now need control click to equip a weapon from a tray, and we'll see why in a moment. And the second one is that the detachment from a possessed pawn is now manual using the F key, same as the attachment. So let's start with the F key. As a reminder, when the puppet option is enabled here in this window, and when you attach yourself to a pawn, you take control of the pawn, you possess it, and you can now use the displacement key to move it around and also use the gamepad. And in the previous version of YAG, when going backward, you were automatically detached from the pawn. But this proved very uncomfortable and unpractical when using the gamepad because of the analogic stick, which was quite imprecise. And so I came back to a manual detachment process. So now when you want to detach from a possessed pawn, you have to click the F key again. Okay, so you select F to attach and F to detach and be free again. Okay, next, the weapon equipment. I'm going to use the Medusa here to show you that, and we are going to display a tray of swords. Not this one, the medieval one is okay. So you can see now that if I select the Medusa and click a pawn, nothing is happening. The weapon is not equipped. And if I want to equip the weapon, I now have to press Control and click the weapon to equip it. The reason for that is that we now have a new preview window to browse the trays. So to display it, we have to double click any pawn on a tray, and we can double click the pawn to hide it. So there are a few options to this window. All right. And so the way it works is that when it's visible, you just have to click any pawn on a tray to show it on the tray. All right. So the simple click being now used to browse the tray, it cannot be used to equip the weapon, and that's why we now have to use control click to equip weapons. This preview window can also be used on regular pawns, so I can click the Medusa here to display it. Okay. We also have a new button to retrieve the tray of the currently previewed pawn, and it also works with weapons. So if I click the sword of the Medusa, I can quickly get back to its tray. Okay. Also note that the content window now displays the current tray in use, so you know exactly which tray you are seeing. Another very new and very important window is this one, which gives a list of all the existing pawns. Okay, so you can filter in and out any type of pawns, like human, creatures, objects, and internet pawns. Okay, same for the pin and unpin properties, and you have, of course, a manual filter here. It also gives you the number of pawns in the list, so you can know how many pawns you're using for each type, and in total if you're displaying everything. You can select each pawn, okay, and see its owner. Let's take this one. You can see its owner, you can see the pawn itself in the preview window, and you can go to the pawn. All right, so it allows you to quickly retrieve or copy any pawn. It also obviously work with weapons, as we already seen. So we can visualize the treasure here, we can go to it, and so on and so on. So all in all, those combined new features coupled with the already existing favorite system, I remember here, um, are quite powerful and will hopefully make the content management much easier than before. Now, a very important remark about those new features, though, they will work only with pawns created from this new version of YAG. To show you that, I kept a spider from a previous save. So let's go to it. That's the old spider here. Let's go and check it. And you can see that when trying to retrieve its tray, I get an error message telling me that the pawn doesn't have the information, right? And in the same vein, if I try to filter out everything, you can see that this old spider is not filtered. Okay, and on the contrary, those features, as you already saw, worked well with the newly created spider. Okay, this time I can get the tray. So do not be surprised if those new features don't work on your current pawns. That's expected, and there is nothing I can do about it because the information about its tray is given to a pawn at its creation, so it's too late for the already existing pawns. So this small inevitable bug will disappear as old pawns are replaced by new ones. All right, don't be surprised by that. Okay, next we have a new color picker, much more comfortable than the previous one. So let me show you that using, for example, the visual options. Okay, so you can display it by clicking the preview button here, which will send the preview color in the color filter. You can click this this old color to set the new color to its new value. And other than that, it's pretty much a color picker, so nothing new. You just choose a color and you apply it to whatever you want. Okay, so generally speaking, a dark color will work quite well visually, as you can see. If you're into transparency, you can go for that as well. All right, so quite easy. And of course, you have a few set up a few preset here, like that red, green. And if you're in love with the old YAG look, you can sort of retrieve it here. But the default look is now this one. All right, so that's it for the color picker. Hopefully much more comfortable and easy to use than the previous one. All right. Finally, this version comes with many small quality of life improvement. So you can now double click to a pawn to also close the pawn window. Before you could only open it, you can now close it still by double clicking. So that makes things a bit easier to use. The journal automatically pops up on error messages. So if you try something and nothing happens, you can now you can't miss the message explaining what's wrong, like you're not the dungeon master, or you can't delete a possessed pawn. So for example, let us possess this spider here and try to delete it. And oh, I have to select it, sorry. And you can see that I get an error message telling me that it cannot be deleted because the pawn is currently being possessed, right? So that should avoid situation when you try to do something and nothing is happening, and that can be very frustrating. So now you can't miss the message explaining what's wrong. Okay, this is optional. You can get rid of it in the UI if it bothers you, but this is enabled by default. Also, the small pawn info is now displayed by default, as you can see when the pawn is hovered by the mouse. You can, of course, disable it, like on this pawn here, if you don't like it, and you can force it to be permanently visible, like on those two spiders. Okay, but the default behavior now is that the information will be displayed when the pawn is hovered by the mouse. Also, clicking anywhere on a window will now put it automatically on top. So for example, in the previous version, I had to click the the top bar to make the windows, to put the windows on top. Now I can click anywhere in the window and it will come on top. So much more practical. Okay. And finally, the gamepad controls have changed. So hopefully to a more intuitive and comfortable usage. You have all the new controls here at the last page of the cheat sheet. Okay, so if you're into gamepad usage, don't forget to read it. And all right, I think that this is it for this video. So thank you very much for watching it. I hope you enjoyed it. And if it's the case, then hopefully see you in the next one. Thank you very much. Bye.